Here to talk about taking bold risks. It's really hard to, to drive innovation and invention without taking risks and risking the downside, the flip side of that coin, which is the risk of failure. I have excited to talk about this topic with this great group of panelists. I think over the course of our careers, we will all hopefully have an opportunity to take some bold risks, to make some bets. And I think one of the important things is to really take failure in stride. It's going to happen. If you're not failing, you're not probably innovating and pushing yourself enough. I think we're pretty lucky at Amazon. If you read our latest shareholder letter or watch any of the interviews with Jeff Bezos, he talks about failure, the Fire Phone being a notable one. And you don't get businesses like AWS and seller businesses and the Kindle devices unless you have the ability to take some risk and watch them play out. So it's the good with the bad, and I think it's important that we talk about failure. Otherwise, it becomes that dark mark that is very isolating. So to get started, I'm going to ask the panelists if they could introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I probably am going to surprise most people in the room because everyone's expecting an Amazon keynote panel. Show of hands, how many people know IMDb is a part of Amazon? Yay! All right. So I'm actually a software development manager at IMDb. I've been with IMDb for 5 years now. I joined as an engineer, and I transitioned to a management role recently.
My name is Margot. I am currently a software development manager in retail systems Softlines. So Softlines is the shoes and apparel business for Amazon. I've been at Amazon for almost 12 years now. My current role is I own the technology that supports the customer experiences for a bunch of new initiatives that that Amazon is heading up in order to sort of innovate in how we sell shoes and apparel online.
Hi, my name is Gayatri Narayan. I'm the general manager for customer experiences within the Amazon fashion team. I've been with Amazon for about 3.5 years. This is my third role. I have a background both in technology as well as in business, and it's amazing how I've been able to navigate roles from marketing to general management to what I am in now as a biz tech leader. So that's what excites me about Amazon.
Great, thank you, ladies. So let's start off on the positive. Have there been times when you've taken a risk that's really paid off? I know, for instance, for me, when I joined Amazon, I actually started by running a marketplace for Amazon within web services. And I had never had any retail or marketplace experience before. I'd been a connected device kind of client software person. So it was a big risk, paid off, thankfully. But have you taken a risk that's paid off?
I can, talk about how I've structured my teams to enable innovation and risk-taking. So I've sort of tended to use a two-pronged approach. One is really sort of weaving in the emphasis on innovation and risk-taking within the team culture. And the way I do it is make it obvious that we live in a very dynamic business environment, and the change is one thing that's constant, especially in retail, because what customers buy, how they buy, and where they buy products from changes all the time. So what we tend to do is we have quarterly offsites where it's called a diversion day. We go off and think about how we can innovate on behalf of the customer. I make sure that individuals on my team have either risk-taking or innovation projects as a part of their development. And then I pair them up with mentors and make sure they have resources where they can strategize and figure out how to mitigate some of the risks. There's a second part of it, which is really thinking hard about how do you make sure that your team has the time to innovate and take risks and strategize. So as a part of that offsite, we also talk through, what are the things we're working on right now, our daily activities, and how can we automate it, maybe eliminate some of the things, and then free up some time to go experiment.
Yeah. My example is a little bit more personal, actually much more personal. So I've spent pretty much my entire career focused on technology, engineering. I am an engineer in my blood and my soul. But there was a time when I did not realize that I am an engineer throughout. So just to give you some background, I found that my career has been sort of driven by what I call existential crises. It's really a time for me when it's about once every 2 years, but I take a step back and I reevaluate, what is it that I want to do for the rest of my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it's surprising how often this actually changes. So about 7 years into my career at Amazon, I decided I want to learn more about business. I've been an engineer my entire career. What does business mean? What does it mean to develop a business? What does it mean to make business level decisions? Because a lot of that ends up driving the technology that I end up building. So Jeff Bezos actually came up with a company-wide program, and they decided to take some well-performing technologists and basically place them into business roles. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I'll be a product manager for about 2 years, see how it goes, and maybe that'll sort of move my career forward in ways that I never really expected. So I assumed a product manager job, settled in a bit, and about 5 months in realized that this was not a good fit. I realized, this was an incredibly educational experience for me. I learned so much from this. And to be fair, for about 6 months to a year after this little trial, I actually felt I'd failed, and I'd failed miserably, because I wasn't very happy being a product manager, and I realized that product managers don't necessarily think exactly like engineers. They think in very different ways, and I felt like, oh, well, I know how to think like an engineer, and I didn't really know how to think like a product manager, so man, this was an absolute failure. I can't believe what happened. It was so embarrassing. But later on, I realized that, now I have a greater appreciation for all of the different roles that we have at Amazon, and a greater appreciation that I would say actually most people don't necessarily have. And as the years have progressed since then, I realized that this opportunity actually gave me so much more than I had originally expected. My manager in that position actually referred me into my current role. And I realized that this current role is actually one of the best fitting roles that I've probably ever had in my entire career. And it not only fits sort of from a business sense, a business learning sense, but also I get to own the technology. I get to build on my engineering skills. Overall, it's a great fit for me. And I probably wouldn't have this experience, and I wouldn't be able to be as prepared I am for this experience if not for that failure.
Right. Cool. And how do you, just as you're thinking about these risks, how do you evaluate the risks that you're about to take?
I think you should take a risk anytime you can, but that's not very helpful. There are, of course, some very tangible, real situations that don't allow you an appetite for risk. I mean, if you're a single parent or a caregiver, or you have limited resources, that limits your risk-taking appetite. But I think the basic framework still stays the same. You ask the basic questions that are pretty self-evident. What am I going to get out of this? What will this require me to do? What is the cost-benefit analysis, if there is a return on investment, whatever. But I think where most of us muddy the waters in our analytical thinking is when we, two things. One, when we over-exaggerate the chance or the probability of failure, and two, when we over-exaggerate the impact, or if we do fail, what happens? Like, one, will we fail, and when if we fail, what happens? I think the will we fail part, there's enough research on women and inner critics and how we're so, the self-confidence that we lack that men apparently don't, I don't know. It's hard for me to talk about this because I am naturally a very risk-averse person, so it's ironic for me to be here talking about this right now. But I do know personally, I have been impacted by the similar thing about being in failure, like being in a situation that when you do fail, what happens? So I'll tell you one of my personal stories as well. I took on a job a few years before Amazon, IMDb, where I was not suited for the role. It was an engineering job, but it was very detail-oriented to the point of, like, it was an authoring engineer. I don't know how many of you work with Blu-rays and DVDs, but it was very, very, in my mind, tedious. I'm sure people love it. And I was horrible at it. I was abysmal at it. My manager was unhappy, I was unhappy. And my response to failure was, it's denial. It's like, this is not happening. I'm an overachiever all my life. I have to do this. I've never failed at anything before. So I dug in my heels, put on my blinders, and like worked my ass off for, sorry, I'm not supposed to say. I worked really, really hard to like reach a point where, I wasn't failing anymore. And now most people would consider that a success story. I consider that one of my biggest regrets because I spent 3 years proving to a group of people I could do a job that I never wanted to do ever again. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of emotional energy. It's a waste of so much. Like life has so much more to offer. I think the biggest thing to learn is if you're failing, fail fast. Mm-hmm. Get out of there. Do the next big thing. Learn from it. And that framework stays the same. So even within your own unique circumstances, when you're failing, understand why, like we learned, like this is not for you, and then get a deeper understanding of the setup and then move on. I think that's really important. So keeping all of that in mind, when do you take risks? Anytime you can.
That's great. I love that story. I read in the Wall Street Journal, I think about a year ago, about the CEO at Extended Stay America was trying to really kind of drive change in the organization and get people comfortable with risk. And one of the things he did was he made a whole bunch of cards, of get out of jail free cards, and he handed them out. He had everyone hand them out to everyone from, the people in the back office to the people in the front office to the housekeeping, and really just to drive, like if you make a mistake, you have a get out of jail free card. And I think it's super important to think about how we, inspire, encourage, and really build a culture of risk-taking. So how do you think about that? How do you think about encouraging it at an organizational level?
Yeah, I previously mentioned about a couple of techniques that I've used, which is, conducting workshops as well as making sure that individuals on my team have the time to strategize and innovate and take risks. But outside of that, it really comes down to, having that dialogue with your teams, because a lot of what they do is learning by doing when they're taking risks. Because if the environment is overly structured and folks are just working on a regimented set of things, they don't really learn. So I truly believe that taking risks is creative problem solving, communication abilities improve, and also the individual feels like they're learning and they feel a lot more satisfied and content with their roles. So it's ongoing conversations with the teams, making sure that they have the time to focus on these activities. And I always ask, when my team members come to me and say, oh, here's this brilliant idea, it's like, awesome, now you're going to tell me how it's not going to work. Right? And part of it is just being mentally prepared. Things can go wrong, and I just need to know what my plan is. What's my plan B or plan C if things don't go out as expected? And part of that is also defining the goals and the metrics. Even if it's sometimes it's, I'll take an example. I was in marketing, and we were doing this social media campaign, and social media was just taking off at this time, and now I'm kind of demonstrating my age, but anyway. And it was really hard for us to figure out, what are the metrics that we need to track for this initiative? And but we forced ourselves to say, okay, if it's awareness, how do we quantify that? And set ourselves up to these are the goals we want to hit. And if we don't hit it, when the campaign runs, what are the other plans that we have in place to make sure we can try to reinforce things? So it's more of a structured approach, making sure the teams have the tools and the frameworks they need to think through what are the goals, as well as, if things don't go as planned, how do we recover from that? And telling them it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, if it doesn't pan out, let's just figure out how we can mitigate some of that risk. So that's kind of the dialogue that I have with my team members to help them innovate and take risks.
I'll take on that, like telling them it's okay. I mentor a lot of younger women engineers, and I have to constantly keep reminding them it is okay to say something that you think might sound stupid. It is okay to ask a question. It is okay. I mean, we take risks as these big ventures. For someone, it could just mean asking a question in a meeting is very risky. And I think, especially as women in engineering, we've worked so hard for, like, to just say it's okay for me to be a woman in an engineering field, that they're constantly afraid of being judged. And I sit with them and I tell them, it's okay. You will sound stupid, that is fine. Then you will have an answer and you will not be stupid anymore. I have to constantly remind them that this fear of failure, this fear of, what if I do this? What if you do this? Go ahead, do it. Yeah. It is fine. And I think I find myself repeating that at least 4 times a day, telling my team, it is okay. Do it. And I think it has to be at a one-on-one personal level where you constantly keep telling someone, you want to do this? Go ahead, do it. I'm here. I'm backing you up. And if we fall, we'll figure it out. Right?
Yep.
You know, like,
Absolutely.
In my current org, we have this mantra of don't feel like you can't break the rules. There are definitely rules that people will come up with. I was actually, in a previous life, I worked for a manager who definitely tried to create a lot of set of rules around how his team was supposed to perform. He had very strong expectations about, oh, if you're going to reach this goal, you're going to reach this goal in XYZ path. It was just very restrictive. And because of that, we couldn't innovate. We really couldn't. Anytime we tried to break a rule, we got yelled at, and that wasn't fun at all. It's not a very creative, inviting environment, supportive environment. It definitely wasn't supportive. In my current organization, we don't want people to try to innovate given all of these constraints, and oftentimes they're actually artificial constraints because somebody believed that there was a rule around something, something that doesn't exist. And that's one of the things we really try to just reiterate over and over again, especially with our engineering team and our PM team, just, what does the world look like if there are no rules? Like, bottom line, we don't want to hurt anybody. There's definitely legal restrictions, but beyond that, the sky's the limit.
Great. Have you walked away from a risk? And I'm curious as to
all the time.
But you just said you should take all the risks. Now you're going to tell us you walked away.
But I also said I'm a very risk-averse person, and I've regretted it. I mean, I come from I guess it's very typical culturally to have, my family said, you have to get a master's degree. There's no way out of it. Like, no, it wasn't even a conversation. I got into school, I got the aid, and I really didn't want to do it. I wanted to go and work actually at Amazon at the time, like many years ago. And my dad said it's not an option. I actually wanted to go and learn business. I got through an MBA program, and he was like, no, we're a family of engineers. You have to do engineering. So, with equality, with being raised like my brother, I got the same set of pressures that my brother got, which is why I'm here. But I didn't have the appetite at that time to be able to say, I don't want to do this. I mean, Dad's always right. I love doing this, but at that time, it was not. It is very scary to go against so many pressures, social pressures, family pressures, work pressures, to go and say, I don't want to do this, or I want to do this. It's hard. Yeah.
I actually have an interesting story. So I guess similar backgrounds. So about 8 years ago, I decided to leave my IT job and go and get my MBA full time. I had a 2-year-old daughter. I was pregnant with my second one. And my dad looked at me and said, oh my God, you've kind of lost it. He's like, how are you going to get through this? Because you're sinking all this money into this program, and everyone else is going to be in their late 20s, and you're not going to be able to keep up with the pressure. And to add to that, I had a commute which was about an hour and a half every day. It was not fun sitting in the Chicago highways in winter. But I did it, and my husband was very supportive, and I'm very grateful for that. And what I told everyone, my family especially, is, I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of this, right? I've got a lot of other things I need to take care of, but education is important for me. So I went ahead, got through the program. My professors and my friends at that time were very supportive. And, I've done a whole bunch of different things after that. And my daughters look at me now. I have two girls, 12 and 8, and they look at me and they say, Mom, you're an inspiration. You've kind of shown that you can take it in your stride. And you may not be the best person at it. And I was not the valedictorian or I didn't get straight honors and stuff. But I did it. I did a good job. And I'm kind of maximizing the degree now. So yes, there are times you dive right in and you're not sure of the outcome. But as long as you have support, you can get it done. You just define your own course.
That's great. That's great. Have you been in jobs or had managers who were particularly good at, kind of making it safe to take risks and inspiring bold moves?
Yes. Oh God, I was very fortunate very early on in my career to have a manager who took me aside and told me, Margot, I should be the one drawing you back in. You should be doing whatever you think is the right thing. I trust your judgment. Go do whatever you feel you need to do. Go make mistakes. I don't care. If I feel like I need to bring you back, I will let you know. And I had just graduated from college. I was very used to a very regimented schedule, a lot of rules, somebody tells you what to do, you just go do it. If you do it well, then you get rewarded for it. I'd never really taken risks before. And I had to sit with that for a while because I was like, what does that even mean? Like, what is he seeing that I don't even see? Like, I think I have confidence. I think I know what I'm doing. And I realized that, I was actually holding myself back. And that, I think, was that pivotal defining moment in my career. And I'm very lucky to have had that very early on because that has basically set the entire tone for the rest of my career, especially the rest of my success at Amazon. I have a lot of people who I mentor, and they come into Amazon. It's a very different environment. And, to Anadi's point, right? Like, the main message I always keep repeating is, you just do whatever you think is the right thing. And if you do the wrong thing, somebody will let you know, and you can take it with a grain of salt. But still, like, you should trust your own judgment and do what you think is the right thing. So, yeah. Hats off to Stefan Haney, because he's a great manager for that.
That's great.
I had a manager at IMDb. This was when I was thinking of transitioning from engineering to management, and I told him I want to do this, and he had got my career development plan in place so that I could, transition over the course of a year. And then at some point in that year, teams shuffled, my projects changed, the roadmap shifted, like it always does, and the career path didn't make sense for that year anymore. So he said, why don't you be the tech lead for this other team, and then we'll figure out how to get you back on the path. And I was disappointed, and I said, yeah, if that's what the company needs me to do, I'll do it. And then he stopped me. He said, what do you want? And I said, I told you, I kind of want to be a manager. So he said, no, tell me, what do you want? And I was like, I want to be a manager? He says, stand up, say it out loud. And this is a one-on-one, right? And he's shouting at me. He's like, stand up, say it out loud. What do you want? I said, I want to be a manager. He said, then why are you saying, okay, you'll be tech lead? I said, because you told me you needed me to be. He's like, no, I'm going to tell you whatever is happening here, but it's for you to stand up and say, what do you want? It's for you to come back and tell me, no, Tom, this is not going to work for me. Mm-hmm. You have to step out of this regimented, this is what I'm told, this is what I'll do thinking, and you have to take charge and say, this is what I'm going to do. Even if that means there isn't an opportunity right now, you create one, you go figure it out, or you put it on me. He said, like, the onus is on me to make that opportunity for you, but you have to stick to your guns at that point. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, and that was my pivotal moment where my manager was literally screaming across the table at me saying, what do you want? So yeah, I think that's really, great managers.
That's great. That's a great story. How do you, you all have obviously great experience and thought a lot about, kind of the risks that you take. How do you model risk taking for your teams and how do you think about kind of really being a role model to help lead the charge?
I put small things in place. Like, I think they're really so small that even talking about them, they feel self-evident. When we're in meetings, my number one thing is I go around the room, ask everybody to speak up. There's, especially like during retrospectives, you open it up, have one person start, but then it goes around the table. So there's no quiet voices at the table. Everybody has a seat at the table. And then the other thing is, I've started this new thing at work now where, there's always some people who are subject matter experts who are going to take charge. And they, like when you're doing planning, sprint planning, scrum planning, they're like, oh, this is how we should do the story. And I'm like, okay, before we estimate as a group, someone who isn't a subject matter expert, stand up and tell me what you understood of how we're going to do this. And then that puts a lot of, that puts a lot of onus on like everybody who wasn't expecting to be called out on, because they're like, oh, I don't know this person knows it, we just do what they're saying. But then when they're asked to reiterate the feedback loop, they're taking a chance and speaking up and then they ask questions, because then they're like, okay, how do we do this? What about that? Right. I didn't understand this portion, and that helps weed out more things that people take for granted a lot, and that puts everybody, like, that makes it everybody's work. Like, now you're owning it as a team, and you're taking the risks as a team. Right. And there's but that person knows it, and they did it that way. So, yeah.
Quickly tacking on to that, we get together and talk about different initiatives and projects that are in flight, and we talk about what's working, what's not working as a team. So it's okay for individuals at that point to say, you know what, we had this plan and didn't quite work out, and then we ideate as a team on how we can bring things back on track. So those are just different mechanisms that we use to say it's okay to fail.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. We're out of time. I appreciate you sharing all of your stories with us, and I hope you found this useful.